The primary tool that we are going to be using this semester in order to build our data warehouse is Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. If you, after installing Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, open it up, you are first prompted with this screen where you have to enter server type, server name, and authentication mode. So in server type, you need to access the database engine. That's where we can put all our databases. The other options are other Microsoft SQL Server products like analysis services, reporting services, integration services, and Azure SSIS integration runtime. Analysis services and reporting services are covered in the Business Intelligence electives course. So if you find this quite interesting, you might take that elective. But for now, we have to connect to the database engine. If you put a dot here, it means you connect to localhost, and you have to log on with Windows authentication. So you hit connect, and once you hit connect, you will see here that there's a SQL Server node, and under that you have different options that you can expand. And for this video, we will go over the NorthWind database. Now that you're connected to Microsoft SQL Server and your local host, if you expand the database node, you now get information about here all the system databases that you have and database snapshots, and the databases that you create will be put here. And as you can see, I have the AdventureWorks 2019 source database, the Worldwide Importers source database installed, as well as some other databases. And in this case, NorthWind.db is the source database for NorthWind, and it's the one that I will go over in this video. But first I will show you how to create a new database. You right click and you choose new database. And then up comes this information, and you have to give it a database name. So that could be a test database. Then here you can set owners. And if you don't set an owner, it's going to be with the login credentials that you currently have to access SQL Server Management Studio. You can also put in SA here and click check names. Then you see you get these hard brackets around it. It means that the object has been identified in the central repository, and it's a valid name. SA is server agent, I think. Then if you put this, you are going to have more access privileges for it later, but you can also just not put anything. That's fine, we can always change it later. So let's just not put anything here. Then you can set different attributes for the database files, but for this we're just going to use the standard ones. So you can set which file group is it going to be, initial size, and if there's a max size for when this cannot grow any further. You can also, if you want, change options here and set different compatibility levels. But we're just going to use the standard properties for creating a new database. So if we hit OK here, a new database is created, and it shows up over here, test database. Now, if I click the plus sign here, I expand the node, and it tells me about tables and views and database diagrams, everything that's relevant for the database. If I expand tables, it's going to be blank, like there's nothing there, because we haven't created anything yet. Of course, it has also its system tables and file tables and everything that is generated with the database per standard from Microsoft SQL Server. But in order to put data in here, what we need is the script create northwind.sql. It's downloadable from its learning platform. Now you can see this one says use NorthWind DB, and then do a lot of different stuff because you want it to be named NorthWind DB. But just for the sake of actually running the script, let's take this test database name, and then I can just delete it later. Now I can either hit the execute button up here, or I can use F5. I will use F5. Then it's executing the query. You can see here. So it's doing everything that I requested it to do. Now, if I go over here in the tables section and click it, it's not going to show up because I first need to refresh it. So I right click, I choose refresh. Now it's refreshing all the information that it has on test database from sys tables, so a system table that tells what's in there. If I now expand tables, you will see that it has generated all the tables that I've requested to generate it with this create NorthWind SQL script, including populating the tables row by row by row by row down here. If let's just take the customer table. So if I want to query the customer table, I can right click it and say select top 1000 columns. Now the script is generated and executed at the same time. So I get this information. This is all the data that's in there, blah, blah, blah. If I change this, remove the top 1000, I will now return everything I have in the table. Now for a customers table, which is only 91 rows long, you can see down here, returning every single piece of data in the table is not going to be a huge task, but sometimes, especially if it's tables related to finance entries in an ERP system, then querying all the data is going to take a long time. So usually what I will do is to keep this top 1000 or even top 10 in there as I am generating my script and working through it, making sure it works fine. And then once everything is settled, I will remove this so that I actually get all the data and I can populate my data warehouse later. Let's imagine that I'm only interested in the customer ID and the company name. So if I'm only interested in these two pieces of data, I can simply just remove this. Now I have a more simple select statement. If I hit the execute button or I hit F5, then I'm executing just this select statement and getting this information. Let's imagine that I have forgotten about the different fields that I have in the table. I can also instead put an asterisk, which is selecting all the different fields in my table, so all the columns when I execute the script. So now I will execute it. Let's say that I want to have all the customers with customer ID and company name that are in Germany. So then I will say select customer ID. And you can see that it prompts you for completion, and you can just use the arrows and choose company name. Then from the database and the table, where country equals to Germany. And I have to put these in single quotes, I think. Yes. So I have to put them in single quotes. It's a string data type. So now I get all the customers in Germany. So for a database that you haven't seen before, you might be interested in knowing the relationships between the different tables. And with the NorthWind database, the relationship with the tables should be pretty clear. So we have orders storing information about orders, then order details, storing the details about the orders. We have a products dimension, storing information about products, region, so on and so on. But sometimes the number of tables in a database is going to be rather large. So for example, with the AdventureWorks, we can see, so many tables, especially if it's a highly normalized database. So we might want to generate a diagram showing the relationship between the tables. And the way that we can do this is right-click on the database diagram, say new database diagram, and you might have to install this diagram support before if it's not installed with your installation. So just go ahead and do that. But once you've done that, click the new database diagram. This is where we have an issue because the role of this test database that I created is mine. So I have to change that first, and I will do that now. The way that I'm going to do that is by writing exec for execute, sp for stored procedure, then change db owner. And now it turns like slightly red purplish because that's the correct name, and for some reason it doesn't show up in this auto prompt. The way that I want to change it so that it's owned by the agent service. So now if I highlight only this, it means this is the only part that's going to be executed when I hit execute. So I won't have this select statement run again. And if I hit execute, now it's telling me I have a syntax error. Yeah, I don't need this one, I'm sorry. And then, should be fine. Commands completed successfully. Now I should be able to draw my diagram. So I right click, new database diagram. This database does not have one or more of the support objects required to use the database diagramming. Do you wish to create them? Yes. Wait. Okay. And now we are told about all the different tables that we have on the database. I will add all of them. So click my shift key and click the bottom one, which is territories. If you have more, you have to scroll down. Then if I click add and wait, they are now added to the diagram. Wait. And close. And now we have a final diagram. If I hit the control key, I can zoom out so that I have a nicer overview, right? Now it's too small. I'll zoom in. Yes, and that basically looks like a entity relationship diagram, because it is. And it shows you all the information about the different relationships. So many, it's like infinity sign up here to orders. So many order details to each order. That makes sense, right? If you have somebody placing an order, then you're going to have either one detail, he ordered one thing, or several details, he ordered multiple things, so you're going to have multiple item lines. Then for each of the order details, you will know something about a product. For each of the orders, you will have something about a customer. So an order composed of several order details line is not going to have different customers for each order detail, right? It's going to have different customers by each order, and that's why the relationships are like this. If you want to create a new table, you right-click the tables node here, go new table, then choose the column name. Let's do ID for an ID value, and yet let's choose that of the data type int. Since it's an ID, you're not going to allow nulls for that, so remove the ID here. Let's put name, and rather than the standard nchar, let's choose it in varchar b for varying, because some people have long names. They will have a first name, a middle name, and a last name. And some people have shorter names because they just have one first name and one last name. Let's say names can be up to 100 characters. So let's choose 100. Then you could also do title, and maybe title is shorter. We can either let that be nchar, so not the varying, since titles are just going to be sir or madam, so pretty simple, we know what it's going to be. Or in order to have it standardized across the table, which could also be something you choose, let's just choose it in varchar for all these different types. Go on, blah blah blah. Yeah, in varchar, like this. Okay, then put all your different fields. Once you hit the cross button here, it's going to say save changes to the following items, and we will say yes. And now we get to choose a name. So let's choose test table. So you can see now the table is created here. If we go back and refresh this, fold tables, and test table is the last one. If I right click, select top 1000 rows, it's going to return an empty result set since we don't have any data in here. Let's change this table so that we actually have the ID set as the primary key. The way I could do that was to right click it, script table as, create to, new query window. So now all the SQL code needed to generate the table is generated as a script and opened in this editor window. Let's close this one so that we don't have anything trying to access that test table. Let's delete it over here. Delete. Do you want to delete this? Yes. And then we can add here primary. Now we change this so that the ID is going to be the primary key of this table. And of course, primary keys have to have this not null. I simply just add primary key after this, and now ID will be the primary key of the table. I can also alter the script and add multiple new columns. So now I'm basing it off the title one, and I might choose to put place of employment here, workplace or whatever. Do that an invar char, and let's say that's 50, I don't know. And let's say that could be not null, so a value is required for this. And based on that, maybe I will also have, I don't know, boss, whatever, could be something. And let's say that should also be not null. Now, if I execute this script, a new table is going to be created, and I can see that by refreshing this. Refresh, here it is. And in tables, in the bottom, there's going to be a test table. It has all the columns that I provided, and ID is now the primary key.